Okay, welcome back everybody. We are going to continue our discussion on chapter, I believe it's 11, no, chapter 10, but we're going to talk about 9th, 11th, and 13th chords. So this is extended harmony. So let's jump right in. It's super easy. So we start with our original triad, right? So we can start with, right? So this is our triad, 3 notes in the chord, right? If we have a 7th, we just add another note, right? So we just keep stacking on the snowman. Just like that. If we need a 9th, all we're going to do is add another note, right? So here we've got a triad. Here's a 7th. Here we have a 9th. Okay? All right, starting to sound a little more jazzy. If we want an 11th, stack another one on top. Stack one on the snowman. So this would be 11th. And then finally, so that would sound like this. A little dissonant. And then finally, last but not least, the 13th, you're going to add one more note for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 actual notes in the chord. Right? It sounds a little bit crazy, and obviously most people only have 10 fingers, so putting 7 notes into a chord is nuts. So normally you're going to take notes that we don't need out, right? So just keep in mind, I'll write this out in a different way. So here we have our triad. Three notes. We've got through a 5th, right? Here's your 7th chord. This is what you're normally used to. A 9th is just going to add one more note. So you've got a total of 5 notes in the chord, or a span of a 9th, a major or minor 9th. Right, so you go from C to D, so this is going to be a major 9th, whereas this is major 7th. Perfect 5th on the outside, so that's how you sort of do it, okay? Here, this span right here would be a minor 11th. This is an 11th. And then you've got 13th here, all the way up to A. It would be a major 13th. This interval from C to that high A. So this is a 13th. All right? Now, because people don't normally have 7 fingers just to play chords, we're going to have to erase some of the less important notes. So just like what we can do with a triad, remember if you have not enough notes, if you need to get rid of one, you can get rid of the 5th, right? The 7th chord, also get rid of the 5th if necessary, all right? You can still tell that it's the 7th chord if it has the 7th and the 3rd. Cool? All right, so in a 9th, the unimportant note you're commonly going to get rid of, also a 5th, All right, so obviously the fifth is the least important note that we have. You still need the root, still need the third, still need the seventh, still need the ninth. All right? Now, with the 11th chord, you're going to get rid of the root, you're going to keep the root, get rid of the third, the fifth, and the seventh. No, you want to keep the seventh, sorry. Keep that. So you've got to keep the root, the seventh, the ninth, and the 11th. All right? And then here, you're going to keep the third, get rid of the fifth, keep the seventh, get rid of the ninth, get rid of the 11th. All right, so you're going to keep the root, third, seventh, and the 13th. Here, root, 7, 9, 11. Here, root, third, seventh, and the ninth. Obviously here, root, third, seventh. Here, you got to keep the root in the third. Right? That's really all you have to know. Now we're going to mess around with how the chords, how you'll see them in the wild, what kinds of chord progressions they're part of, where they resolve to, stuff like that. It should be pretty clear cut, hopefully. And if you have any questions again, just come to our class on Monday. And so I'm going to go back to the book now, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this. All right, so this might be a little bit of repetition, but we are again in chapter 10, discussing 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths. So we're going to talk about dominant 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths, and non-dominant 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths. So important concepts. Extended sonorities, known as the 9th, 11th, and 13th chords, are created by adding additional thirds to chords. These chords include dissonances that could be interpreted by non-harmonic tones. Therefore, analyzing a chord as a 9th, 11th, or 13th requires that dissonant factors be given sufficient prominence to be explained as chord tones. So, what they're saying is that if it can be explained as a passing tone or a neighboring tone or one of our other non-chord tones that we've talked about all the way up, all the time, prior to this point, then, that's probably what it is, right? So it's not just going to be found in a run of notes. It's got to be given some serious prominence in the chord, right? So otherwise it can be analyzed as passing tone or neighboring tone or escape tone, any of those, or a suspension. So these have to be really prominently featured in the chord. So, characteristics. The superposition of thirds results in extended chords with 5, 6, and 7 different pitches. Because these chords contain more than 4 notes, it's necessary to omit some of the notes in the 4-voiced writing. So we talked about this a little bit. So in a 9th chord, they add B flat to make it an actual dominant 7th chord. But you're going to omit the 5th. So the 5th gets taken out. In the 11th chord, the 3rd and the 5th are going to get taken out. And in the 13th chord, the 5th, the 9th, and the 11th are going to get taken out. All right? So you're just going to have the root, 3rd, 7th, and 13th. All right? 9th and 11th chord tend to lose their identity when inverted. So they're generally found in root position. So remember that. They're not going to be found in some other crazy first inversion or what would it be, like 7th inversion. They're going to always pretty much be found in root position. And 9th, 11th, and 13th chords are found in major and minor keys. Note that major, the dominant 9th and dominant 13th contain a major 9th and major 13th, respectively, whereas in the minor mode, both minor intervals, the 11th So they're going to both be minor. The 11 is unaffected by changes of mode, right? So in F major, you can see, got this B flat. It's going to look just like that. In minor, we're going to raise that third. Otherwise, it's unaffected. Right? So this B flat, the D flat gets lowered by a half step, that ninth. Okay? And then same with 13th. So you raise the third to make it a major dominant. And then those notes are going to get lowered. So like 13th, the A is lowered a half step versus not. So right here you're going to have a major 13th on the outside versus a minor 13th on the outside. But if you're in F major, you can see this one is unaffected because the F is already where it's supposed to be. Okay? So, and we can play these for you if you want to hear them. So we run and do that. So if we look at our first chord, this F major 5 chord, right? Which normally when you hear it, you're going to leave out this 5th. Right? If we move it to minor, F minor, it's still going to be, those all stay the same. B flat stays the same. And then you're going to add D flat. And of course, when you leave the 5th out, it's going to sound like this. Right? Same goes with the 13th. Sorry. Right? But of course, when we leave out the 5th, and then the 7th, or the 9th and the 11th, it's going to sound like this. Right? When we go to F minor, this gets lowered. Right? It gets lowered a half step. Whereas an 11th, because it's essentially a perfect fourth plus an octave, you're going to get right, that F is going to stay the same no matter what. And if we leave out the 5th and the 7th, that's what it's going to sound like. Oh, sorry, the 3rd. There you go. So that's what it sounds like in major. It's also going to sound like that as F minor. Nothing changes. Right? So bear that in mind. Now, when we actually see these in the wild,